Hey guys, and welcome to this episode of TNCBA's Tips, Tricks, and How-Tos. And this week, Kelsey and I are talking about something that has paid off for us here in the early part of March, maybe into the middle of March. And it really kind of depends on the lake you're on, Kelsey.
Conditions too,
Conditions too, the way the fish are setting up. But this week we're talking about A-rigs. And Kelsey, this is a bait that it's been a hot topic on tour levels because they've banned it in many situations. A lot of people don't like to throw it. It was insanely popular when it first hit the trails, and it catches fish, but it can also wear you out. And if you don't have confidence in it, you're sitting there going, "Good grief! I don't even know why.
Why am I doing this?"
Because it's a lot of money hanging on the end of your rod. But when it's on, like we found on Cherokee one time, when they're eating it, you better be throwing it because it's going to happen fast, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So we're going to let Kelsey sit here and talk to you a little bit about what his setup is, what baits he likes to throw on the A-rig. I do want to preface this by saying we're in Tennessee, so
3 hooks.
3 hooks and 2 dummies. That's as much as we can have. We can't throw 5 hooks on these, so make sure you're following those state regulations that you have. But Kelsey, I'll let you take it away and talk to us a little bit about what your setup is for the A-rig, all right?
Well, let me get unhooked here.
You got to get unhooked here a little bit. The chandelier, guys, it'll get you every time.
Oh yeah, but as far as setup, I'm throwing this on a 7-Eleven like beast rod.
Yes.
It's made by Akuma. It's actually called the Guide Select. It's made for throwing big baits.
Yep, definitely.
7-Eleven, heavy with a moderate fast tip.
Yeah.
You want something that's going to have a little bit of give.
What kind of line are you throwing on there?
I'm throwing it on 20 to 25 pound fluorocarbon.
Right.
I've tried it with braid, had a lot of problems. You get biggest problem with braid is if you do have a backlash or it gets wound up in that reel somewhere, 9 times out of 10 you got so much weight there it's going to snap, cut through the line, and you're out an umbrella
or rip
rig.
your whole reel off the thing. So it is very violent. Hold that thing up here so we can see it a little bit, Kelsey. But again, with these baits, as we talked about with having 3 hooks and 2 dummies, what kind of weights are you throwing on that bait?
I'm using
on that rig, I should say.
Yeah, I'm using the J Wells.
Okay.
I'm using 1/4 ounce weights on my actual hooked baits, and then I go a little bit lighter with my dummy baits, just so they're the ones that are staying on the top.
Yep.
But I mean, you can look at the bait and know how you want to weight it out because you want it to fish on the
you don't want the bottom. You don't want it rolling over. You want those hooks to be on the bottom because typically those fish are
coming up.
They're suspended. They're coming up on this. They're going to be running through it, and that's one of the things that stinks sometimes about us throwing just 3 hooks and 2 dummies. There's been plenty of times I know that I've had fish run through that bait and maybe go after those dummies or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And it gets frustrating because if I'd have had maybe 5 hooks on there, I'd have got them.
Yeah, and the thing is I mean, when they hit this bait, 9 times out of 10, they're killing it.
Oh yes.
I mean, the bite is just very vicious.
This isn't like another swim bait bite where it's super subtle, because we'll talk about swim baits a little bit later, especially as we get into the summer and stuff and post spawn. But those bites, you're slow rolling it. When they load up onto it, sometimes it just goes mushy, and like you give them some time.
This is more of the school mentality. They're running through that school feeding frenzy with their mouth open, just trying to kill them. Take as much as they can.
Now, so we've got a little bit heavier heads on the bottom, lighter heads on those dummy heads at the top. Again, depending on what depth you want to fish, you can change that up real easy. But Kelsey, let's talk also now about what do you put on those hooks and on those jig heads. What do you like to throw? And I'll pull it up here on the smaller camera.
I'm using the KVD Perfect Plastic swim baits. They're it's called the Swim and Shiner. That's just what I like. That one's a 4-inch bait. It's more like a 3.8, more or less.
Yep.
It's a smaller profile. I prefer that on those. Those are very durable. They're not too terribly expensive. They come packed. Actually, if you ever bought one of the old KVD umbrella rig packs, that was the same swim bait that came with them. Yeah, okay. And I mean, I haven't changed out these baits in a long, long time. They've caught several fish.
That's nice.
And that's the thing. Like, I've probably had the same setup on this rod for probably 3 to 4 years. I'm not kidding. Like they just
That
hold
also
up.
tells you that it's very specific to when we throw this
Yes.
thing. This is not something you're rolling out there all year long throwing around. We talked about the Kitex and the finesse swim baits that we have on our deck all the time for backups. This is not that thing. But also, I mean, there's a lot of money there in a setup with the A-rig, so you don't want to be going through tons and tons of swim baits over the course of time, because I mean, you've got 5 of them on there, and if your swim baits are tearing up easy, you're going through a ton of them.
I mean, you're better off going with like the Bass Pro Shops, those type, because I mean they're a little bit tougher, they're cheaper, and they're going to last you a long time, and you know you got a lot of money tied up into this, so you want to try and minimize that as much as possible, especially with the fear of losing it.
And the other thing is having you a good plug knocker, and sometimes a larger plug knocker is important with these A-rigs, but you don't want to lose that A-rig, so having a good solid plug knocker. So we've talked about the fact 20 to 25 pound fluorocarbon. Again, people do throw braid. Sometimes they throw this over tops of grass and stuff. We don't deal with that. We're talking about clear water, so I know it's a bunch of metal, and yeah, those fish, they don't care obviously about all that metal there, but I still like to have fluorocarbon. 20 to 25 pound, a good heavy rod. Every once in a while, if I go with a lighter one, I'll go to a medium heavy, but I'm still talking about a very stout medium heavy 7-11, still a long rod, so you can bomb this thing out there, cast it really easy. And it's not I want to talk about the casting thing for a second, because a lot of guys get worn out by the A-rig. This is not a flinging this thing around like it's a crankbait. I am taking this back, and I'm gonna. It's a pitch almost. You can do a roll cast with it, but it is a pitch.
And I'll show you if I can.
Don't cast that thing in here, Kelsey.
I know.
Oh no, this is not going to work out well.
If you look, this rod has a very, very long butt. To it. So I mean, basically, that's getting that. Thank you. Thank you for the assistance.
I'm gonna guide you through.
A little tough here. Very limited space, but it's got a really long butt into it. So basically, that's just you put that rod up against your side to make those casts. And, it takes a lot off of your shoulder. So I mean, you're trying to save yourself with it. That's the whole design. That's why you want a monster of a rod to throw this thing on, 1, and 2 to hold up the amount of weight you're throwing.
Yeah, so that's going to help you out with getting tired. One last thing I want to talk about here is we've talked about the baits, talked about the setup. Again, this is the umbrella rig that you're throwing. There are several different ones out there. Some guys like with no blades. There are some regulations in some cases with some tournaments of how many blades can be on there. So look into all those things.
FLW, I want to say it was 5 swimmers, 5 blades, 3 hooks.
Yeah, so you couldn't have more than 5 blades. Do you ever, because I hear a lot of talk, Kelsey, about like having that center one a different color? Do you prefer to keep it the same color, or what do you do?
I keep it the same. Now, I will say this. The one I'm throwing right now, and I've thrown it like this forever, it's a little bit bigger. I went up a size, so I mean that, and that's one of my hooked baits, of course. But like I said, I went with a little bit bigger swim bait. That was just preference.
Right.
I mean, it probably doesn't mean much, but
it does a similar thing to what having a different color on that middle one does. It gives them something to hone in on. It's a different profile that those fish might go after.
It's the bigger snack.
It's the bigger snack. So guys, as you think about this, we've talked about the setup. We're going to talk very quickly, Kelsey, about you can really kind of throw it anywhere you want to.
Yeah, I mean,
but we're typically focusing sometimes on points, bluffs, 45s.
I know a lot of people like to go and throw them close to like lay downs and things like that.
Yeah.
That's not my game. I've just never had the urge to go throw that kind of money around timber. I mean, just honestly, but I like throwing them on points. When it gets windy, it's one of those baits you can pick up. It's easy to handle in the wind.
Yes, definitely.
It's heavy enough, so I mean, it's one of those baits I'll pick up then. Wind blown points, wind's blowing in there. A lot of times those fish will set up, especially in the early months or later in the fall. But when they're really honed in on bait fish, that's when I'll keep it in the boat.
Yeah. So we're still we're still in this pre-spawn mode. We talked about crankbaits in our last tips, tricks, and how-tos. So you're still going to have fish in both phases here that they're still kind of winter mode. And you've got those that are pre-spawn really pushing up onto the bank, getting ready to go. And this is that one that's still kind of those lingering ones that might be suspended out there. Like we said, talk about sometimes you're going to have those conditions where those fish just pull back off the bank. We've got a situation right now with our lakes. They're going to start falling.
Yep.
These lakes have flooded. They've come up. The lakes are going to start falling. Those fish might suspend quite a bit on some of these points and on some of these banks, 45s and bluffs. You can get out there with an A-rig and fish it a little bit deeper than that jerk bait. And those fish that are suspended, they're looking for bait ball still. They're going to come up there and kill it. So don't be afraid to have it out this time of year. Don't think that every single fish is up shallow or every single fish is still out deep. But it's certainly something that this time of year, on the right day at the right time, can be lights out. And like I said, we've had those times. We had it a few years ago on Cherokee for a club event that it seemed to turn on in the afternoon. I gave Kelsey a shout. They put fish in the boat super quick. Me and Dad put fish in the boat super quick. So when it's on, it's great. But don't wear yourself out with it. Big rods, big line. Work on the casting where you're not trying to do this all with your wrist.
Use your body, not your arms. I mean, use your whole body.
Yeah, he's definitely telling you the truth there on that one.
It'll take a lot off of you.
It will wear you out. But guys, we hope you get out there, get some confidence with the A-rig. We're in the same boat as you a lot of times. It's something that is hard to get some confidence in. We don't throw it a ton, but it is something that will catch you some fish and it'll do you a lot of good. So we'll see you on the next tips, tricks, and how-tos. But get out there in the meantime, catch you some fish on an A-rig.
See you.